Today we're speaking with Cathy Young, Executive Director of the Center of Excellence for Food and Agriculture at Cornell Agritech. Cornell has just issued a detailed report aimed at stimulating innovation from entrepreneurs and investors in the food and agriculture sector in New York. Welcome to Dairy Business Update, Cathy.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
First of all, just tell us a little bit about your organization, if you would, the Center of Excellence.
The Center of Excellence for Food and Agriculture at Cornell Agritech was actually established in mid-2018. It's an economic development hub, so many people will know that Cornell University is known globally for excellence in food and agriculture. And New York State wants to make sure that we are growing those industries and making connections for farmers, producers, and food and beverage companies to help them grow. And so we've been doing that now since, as I said, 2018, about 2.5 years. And we're seeing great results. There's so much science and research and technology and innovation at Cornell. And we're really focused on getting it out into the marketplace so that we can help the farmers, so that we can help grow economic opportunity and jobs in New York. And so it's an exciting job, and it's been very rewarding so far, especially with my background in agriculture.
Yeah, you've mentioned that you're not only upstate native, Livingston County, New York, near Rochester, but you grew up on a dairy farm.
That's right. I was so fortunate to grow up in a dairy farm. I'm second oldest of 6 children. Grew up in a 3rd generation dairy farm. And we also grew, of course, silage corn, alfalfa, hay. But my dad in the 1970s milked about 122 head, which was actually fairly large at that time. And I appointed myself as my father and my grandfather's chief assistant. And so I spent a lot of time in the barn, in the fields, literally. And so that was the best background I could ever have hoped for, because you learn, you know, your listeners know this, but you learn so many lessons about hard work, resilience, neighbor helping neighbor. All those important life lessons can be learned on a farm. And so that's the background that I had. And it's been so rewarding to be in government over those many years, and also in my new position to be able to help farmers and the food and beverage industry in general and agriculture in New York State.
Well, I'm sure our listeners can appreciate that background and are happy to have a former dairy farmer in your position. I too am a New York native, and in my travels around the country, we know that the Empire State doesn't often get a lot of credit as an ag powerhouse. Just give us a little bit of picture of New York agriculture and its importance.
You know, I can relate to what you're saying, because when I was in the New York State Senate, I would speak to colleagues from all around the country. And when I said I was from New York, they immediately thought of Manhattan, New York City, and not understanding that 23% of New York's landmass actually is dedicated to agriculture. So nearly 1/4 of the entire state is focused on agriculture. We have about 1.25 million people working in the agriculture, food, and beverage industries. And so it's really a huge agriculture state. We actually are #1 in production in several commodities: cottage cheese, yogurt, sour cream. #2 in things like maple production, apples, cabbage, and snap beans. And #3 in fluid milk, Italian cheese, and grapes. #4 in corn for silage and all other cheeses, and tart cherries. So we have this enormous agriculture industry that people don't think about. And actually we have about 33,400 farms in New York State. So you're right, it's not thought of, but I do think that Cornell University's leadership in the agriculture and food space does bring attention to New York State, because we're working on solutions not only for the state and the country, but actually global solutions. It's estimated that we're going to have to double our food production to meet world demand by the year 2050. And so that makes the jobs of our growers and farmers even more important. And also the work that Cornell does to be able to bring innovation into the marketplace, to help our farmers and growers stay in business, to help our food industries continue to grow and thrive. So this is a critical mission, and whether you're getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to milk the cows or not, you're an important part of that ecosystem that's been established in our food systems. And it's very important that Cornell and that everyone is doing as much as we can to help people stay in business and actually thrive.
Well, I think that brings us to your report, the report itself. Tell us about the focus and how you feel it will stimulate new solutions for farmers and processors and ag marketers.
Yeah, so the genesis of the report was that this was something we had been thinking about doing, but then after the pandemic hit, we started to see all these cracks in the supply chain, right? So in New York, unfortunately, because the restaurants and the schools were shut down, because there were some trade issues that emerged for milk, because a lot of consumers were buying less perishable items, for example. All of a sudden, we started to hear at Cornell about farmers having to dump their milk because there wasn't an outlet for that milk to go to. We heard about breaks along the supply chain, such as manufacturers having to shut down because of COVID, or distribution systems not operating the way that they should. And so we decided that now is the time to really go ahead with this study and talk to people on the front lines, talk to farmers, talk to growers, talk to food and beverage manufacturers, supply systems, investors, and see what is necessary to make the industry stronger and what is critical for the future to help our farmers. And so we talked to a whole cross section, a whole variety, a lot of farmers, a lot of growers in New York State to find out what's on their minds. What are their biggest challenges every single day when they get up in the morning to when they go at night and go to bed at night? What do they worry about? What can we do to help them? And so there were a lot of conversations that were had, and we came up, I believe, with some very valuable information.
You had a large cross-section of officials, academics, industry players involved in working on this report. Just give us a feel for how you integrated those many points of view into focusing on the farmer survey work.
Yeah, so we partnered, the Center of Excellence actually partnered with another Cornell entity, Center for Regional Economic Advancement. And so we did reach out to the whole cross section, as you mentioned, of different players. And it was fascinating to see a lot of the same concerns emerge, even though you were talking to a different group, right? So I think that in some ways it was a challenge to bring all the information together, but in other ways, to get all of those different viewpoints and integrate them into one report, I think is extremely valuable as far as figuring out a pathway forward, because you have every element covered from this report. So I believe, again, a very worthwhile endeavor, and it helps Cornell really focus on innovation is the answer in the agri-food system, and that we have to continue to innovate. There's been an explosion of new technologies and research into agriculture and food production over the last several years, and we expect that to continue. But from my perspective, we've got to make it easier for people in business not only to stay in business, but be able to grow their businesses. And that's what we do at the Center of Excellence, and that's what Cornell is focused on, is what technologies and innovation can we bring into the marketplace to make sure that our whole agri-food system is strong.
Cathy, were there any particular insights about dairy that the report includes?
Yeah, so, I knew this from before. So when I first was elected to the New York State Senate in 2005, my first leadership position was to serve as chair of the Senate Agriculture Committee. So I was totally looped into agriculture issues. And back then, a lot of the same issues are still the same issues today. Number one for our farmers has to do with labor costs and labor shortages. So labor is the top issue that people are focused on. There was legislation passed in New York State that actually raised the amount that farmers have to pay their workers. And, you know, dairy farmers cannot tap into some of the programs that bring workers into New York State. So, for example, there's a federal H-2A program that brings in temporary workers. And, you know, we have a thriving fruit and vegetable industry, and that's been very crucial to many of our growers to be able to tap into that workforce. But dairy farmers can't do it because it's a temporary program and they can't come year round. We all know that the cows need to be milked every day, twice a day. And so the H-2A worker program doesn't apply. And so we see these incredible shortages. Now, to address it, the farmers that can afford it, many of them have gone to robotics and robotic milking systems. But that presents a challenge because it's very expensive to buy the robotic equipment. And on top of it, you have to retrofit your barn in order to accommodate the equipment. So that, and on top of it, in some historical studies, it's shown that the robotics systems actually reduce the profitability of a dairy farm, because even though the production is higher, the costs are higher too. And so how do you balance that out? In some cases, it's just a necessity that people have to do it because they can't find the laborers that they need. In other cases, it's a lifestyle thing where maybe it's easier to use the robotics. But a lot of the large farms, we even talk to farms that milk thousands of cows a day, and some of them use robotics and some of them have chosen to maintain the more standard milking techniques that are out there. So it was a real mix, and it was interesting to hear the different perspectives, even within the dairy industry. You know, and the other issue that is perennially a challenge has to do with the price of milk and what dairy farmers are paid for their milk. And as you know, there's the federal milk marketing system. And, you know, unfortunately, if labor costs go up, for example, for a small business like a pizzeria, they don't want to, but they can turn around and charge more for the pizzas. As we know, our farmers can't do that. They don't have control over what they're paid for their milk. And obviously that makes operational challenges even more challenging when the milk prices go down. So I believe that on the federal level, there needs to be some reforms. And, you know, this is the old advocate representative in me, but I'm hoping that that particular issue can be solved at some point in time, because our farmers need and deserve to have more income.
Indeed, and I expect we'd hear much agreement on that point. How can our audience, how can folks access your report and see the full detail?
Yeah, the easiest way to get to it is to actually search for the Center of Excellence for Food and Agriculture at Cornell. And our website should pop up on the right-hand side. There is a menu, and you just click on it and the report will come right up.
And that can be looked at online, or it can be downloaded in a PDF format, it appears to me.
Yes, so you can do both. So if you want to look at it online, it's there. And if you want to you know, download it, you can do that also.
Sure. Well, thank you very much, Cathy. We've been speaking today with Cathy Young, Executive Director of the Center of Excellence for Food and Agriculture at Cornell. Thank you, Cathy.
Thank you. Can I add one more thing?
Of course.
Okay, one of the things that I wanted to highlight too with the innovation is that we have a competition called Grow New York, and it is a business competition. Top prize is $1 million, two $500,000 prizes, four $250,000 prizes. for startups. So we talk about value added for dairy farmers too. And if, you know, this might be something that people might want to take a look at. They come in and do their business pitch, and this will be the third year, and it's a phenomenal event. And it really focuses on agriculture and ag innovation and how crucially important it actually is.
And I think Grow New York was involved in this report as well. Is that the case?
So Grow New York is part of the Center for Regional Economic Advancement. And so we're very pleased to have them as partners.
That's great. Thank you for reminding us about that, bringing that up. Again, speaking with Cathy Young at the Center of Excellence for Food and Ag at Cornell. I'm Joel Hastings for Dairy Business Update at dairybusiness.com.